Hi, I'm Eric Lambert, and welcome back to How to Clinical Research. So today's call comes all the way from India. This man is looking for some info on how to get into the clinical research world. He doesn't have any experience in clinical research. He did take a little bit of, education about clinical research while he was in school, so he understands just some basics about it, but he is interested in building a career in it. So today's call, I'm going to be just giving him some advice on how to go about searching for a job and essentially what would set him up for the best route of success to begin his career in clinical research. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started with the call. Let's start off with you going over your background and what your goals are to get into clinical research.
Okay, so I am a founding graduate guy.
Okay, and do you have any experience in clinical research from school or any?
No, sir, I'm a fresher. I don't have any experience.
Okay, and then have you ever volunteered with any doctors or anything like that?
In hospital side.
Okay.
Like case interpretation, case study.
And have you worked with doctors, I guess in different capacities, like maybe in a private practice, in a hospital,
in hospital.
In hospitals? Okay, great. So what, I guess, sparked your interest to get into clinical research?
Actually, in my sixth year, I studied clinical research subject.
Oh, you studied clinical research in school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in school.
Okay, great. So what did you learn about it there?
I just learned about how will the state sponsor, the coordinator, like a overall structure. I studied, not in deep.
Okay, but they taught you kind of like the basics of what?
Yes, the basics.
Okay, perfect. So I guess let's start off with. Do you have any questions for me? Aside from getting into clinical research, what are your goals? Are you trying to work with doctors? Do you want to work with sponsors? What titles are you after? If you give me a little bit more info, that would be helpful.
Sir, I have no idea what in that field. That's why I ask about you. What are the careers in clinical research?
Okay. So, I guess to start with that, so it's good to understand the different, tiers or levels there are in clinical research. So, first of all, you have pharmaceutical companies and biotechnology companies. The biotech companies are like the medical device companies, okay?
Okay.
Pharmaceuticals, of course, they just make all the drugs for various diseases. So it could be for anything ranging from, like infectious diseases to pulmonary things to dermatology, etc. Now, within there, you have the different people that work in clinical research. So you have the site level, and that's where the doctor, like the PI works with like his clinical research staff. So that would be people like a CRC, which is a clinical research coordinator. And then you have research assistants there. You have like phlebotomists, RNs maybe, lab tech people, and then, regular office administrative people and the executives essentially of the company. So that's essentially what would make up the site level. A step up from there, you would have a CRO. These are contract...
clinical research associate.
Right. So the CROs, those are kind of like middlemen between the site and the sponsor. So they're not always used. So for instance, like in pharmaceutical trials, they use CROs pretty heavily. But in biotech, sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. All right, and it really just depends on the needs of the sponsor, and that's why they would hire a CRO. But a CRO essentially is just there to conduct some of the work for the sponsor. So for instance, the sponsor has to monitor the sites to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing, that no one's committing fraud, that the data is being collected appropriately, that the protocol is being followed, etc. Right? So that's what a CRO would do primarily for a sponsor is monitor. Yeah. So they'll monitor the site, meaning they'll send people out to the site to review the source documentation and compare it to what's in the EDC and checking like the reg binder and comparing that to what's in the eTMF. So that's essentially what a CRO will be doing. And they can do a number of different things. That's just kind of one of the main functions you'll see a CRO do. But they can do a lot of things. Like they can do like the biostats side of the trial for the sponsor. They can do a lot of things, and it just depends what the sponsor needs and what they hire the CRO for. Now the sponsor may also just control everything in the study themselves. Like I mentioned, kind of like the biotech companies do that a lot. A lot of them won't hire CROs, and if they do, they might hire CROs to just do a very limited capacity of work for them. And most of the work will be done by the sponsor on the medical device side. So everything that I just mentioned, the CRO would do, many times the sponsor will do that themselves. So they'll have their own internal staff to send out to the sites and to work at the in-house, like at the main campus of the medical device company. So it just depends how they're structured. But essentially the site level will manage all of the clinical trials. So they'll see all the patients. They'll conduct all the visits, etc. Right? They'll do the enrollment efforts and everything, and they'll work with like their local or central IRBs. Now the sponsor, they're on the other side, right? So they are the ones making the studies. So they are responsible to find competent sites to work with that can help them succeed in their enrollment goals and help them succeed in getting the right types of patients and essentially just meeting FDA's expectations, right? So that's essentially what the sponsor does in a nutshell, and what the sites do, and that's essentially the entire industry. The FDA, of course, is there, and they're the big regulatory overseeing agency, right? So they're there to make sure that the sponsors are doing what they're supposed to be doing, that the sites are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and if someone does something wrong or illegal, the FDA is the one that would step in and essentially make everyone, they'll put everything straight with like maybe consequences. So they might they might write up the principal investigator if he did something wrong, or they might write up the sponsor if they did something wrong, and they just make sure everyone is essentially everything is accounted for, everyone is responsible for what they're responsible for, and that everyone is doing things in the right ethical manner. Okay, so that's essentially what the FDA does. Now, are you trying to do clinical research in India, or do you want to do clinical research in the US, or what are your plans?
I'm in India, sir.
You're in
because
India.
If I travel India to US, I want to write any exam. If I work in US, now I am Indian. If I work in US, if I want to write any exams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you wanted to work in the US, and if you don't have, for instance, a visa or something like that, you could get hired still through a sponsor, let's say. And they can give you a work visa. Now I don't know exactly how that works, but I know that is an option for people who are from different countries. Now India also has a pretty big clinical research center, from what I hear. There's lots of research out there, so I'm sure there's still opportunities locally to you. If you checked on LinkedIn maybe or any other major website that you have on your end that's for searching for jobs, you should be able to find those positions locally as well. Okay. Now what I would recommend for you is one of two things. You can start on the site level as a research coordinator or maybe a research assistant, just depending on how they want to place you. A research coordinator is, I guess, a little bit higher level on the site level, because they're in charge of conducting clinical trials and essentially just managing the staff that are involved for that clinical trial. So as an entry level, they might put you as a research assistant, meaning that you would be helping that coordinator, right? Now on the sponsor level, you could start there as well, and the entry level for that would be a clinical trial assistant. Or a clinical study assistant. So that's a CTA or a CSA. And those are the entry levels positions at the sponsor. And they're, some sponsors will hire directly out of college even, but they'll put you in those roles, in those CTA roles and CSA roles. Every company uses those roles a little different. Some of them use them to be essentially a direct help to the CRAs, and others might use them as more just kind of computer work, like they're still helping the CRAs, but just indirectly.
Like data entry.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, so they'll make sure that like all the paperwork from the sites are filed correctly into their systems, and that everything's in line essentially. But that's a good way to get promoted eventually to a CRA role. And then if you start on the site level, you could also get directly into a CRA role from there once you have enough experience. Because if you start off as a research assistant and then you get hired as a CRC, and then maybe you're like a site manager or something like that, you can take all that experience and then go into the sponsor world and get hired as a CRA, because you would have had enough experience at least by that point. But the easier way maybe, and maybe the quicker way to become a CRA, would be to start on the sponsor level as a CSA or a CTA, because that's a more direct path to be a CRA. But you could become a CRA on both sides, on the site level and the sponsor level. Yeah. But again, the CRAs, if you don't already know, the CRAs are the ones that monitor the sites. They work in-house with the sponsor to make sure that all the documents are collected for the sites, and that the sites have IRB approval, and that everyone's trainings are up to date, etc. Right? So that's essentially what a CRA is doing.
So if I want to start my career, I want to be a clinical research assistant. Yeah.
Yeah. So the clinical trial assistant or clinical study assistant, those are the same roles, just they might have different names for them, and those are at the sponsor levels. So again, I would check locally, because I know there's a lot of research in India.
Okay.
So I just don't know which companies exactly are out there, but I know that it's a pretty big center for research. So I would check locally, because it might make things just a little easier for you. If you want to come to the U.S. To get a job here, I don't know exactly how all the immigration works, but I do know that they do offer work visas, but I also know that those are limited sometimes. So you would just have to check with the companies and see what they have to offer in terms of that.
Okay, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the companies, the trial are taking place in India only, I think. Is that it?
Many of the trials are taking place in India, you're saying?
Yeah, I am asking for you.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I just know that a lot of clinical research happens out there. So they'll the sponsors will activate sites. So principal investigators in India. So I think if you're looking for a job in India, it'll most likely be on the site level. I'm not sure if sponsors have an actual presence in India. You would have to look that up. But you should be able to find at least site level work there in India.
Okay.
So you should be able to become a CRC there, or a research assistant.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, if a sponsor does have a secondary location in India, then they would of course need to hire people. So it would just depend on their needs. Like they might hire people remotely to conduct work for them there, if they don't have like a local presence. But also, if they hire people remotely, they're usually looking for pretty experienced people, so that they can trust them to do the work correctly. So if you want to get one of those jobs, you might need to wait a little longer to gain some experience, and then go for one of those jobs.
Okay. So I'm listing out some companies. If you know, say
Okay.
Like AstraZeneca.
Yep. Yeah, AstraZeneca. That is a they do pulmonary trials. I think like they work in asthma, things like that.
Asthma. Oh, okay. That companies are two in India. One is Bangalore. Something. Two companies are there.
Okay,
India.
that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Then no one others.
Yep, that's another big company.
Yeah. Then like AstraZeneca.
What's it?
Ascensor, do you know that? Ascensor.
No, I don't know that one.
No, okay, sir. I am selecting this main two company, AstraZeneca, then Novo Nordisk.
Perfect. Yeah, check them out. See if they have any clinical trial assistant positions. And if they do, then just apply. You know, you're going to have to obviously you don't have much experience, so you're going to have to really understand at least what they're looking for. So read the job description. If you know, it's going to talk a lot about system work. So you're going to have to look up what an ETMF is. That's an electronic trial master file. ETMF. And you're going to have to look up what a CTMS is. That's a clinical clinical trial management system, CTMS. Okay, and then you're also going to have to look up what an EDC is, which is an electronic data capture. That's essentially just another software. Those are the programs that CTAs and CSAs primarily work in to manage sites. So the CRAs are going to be the ones that have full control over the study. But the CTAs or the CSAs back up the CRAs through working in those systems. So you're going to have to look up those systems in the context of clinical research and understand, get some visual aids and understand how they work so that when you go apply, at least you're familiar with that.
Okay, sir. Then, sir, what kind of skills I want to develop to survey in clinical research field?
Yeah, so just go onto the website and type that, or go to the career section and see what openings they have for clinical research. You can type in, assistant, or you can type in just clinical maybe, and then it should bring up the jobs that are related to that.
Okay. So you are working in US?
Yeah, so I work at a medical device company.
Okay, sir. So what about your degree? Are you pharmacy guy? Are you a biotech guy?
Oh, yeah, no. I work on the biotech side. I work.
Biotech side.
Yeah. I work as a CRA at a medical device company.
Medical device company. Okay, sir. Then your degree, sir. What about your degree?
My degree. I have a bachelor's in science for biology, and then I have a master's in business for marketing.
So do you see any pharmacy guys, doctor pharmacy guy who are working in clinical research?
Yeah, I do. So not on the biotech side per se. I'm sure there are, but mostly I've seen them on the pharmaceutical side. But it doesn't mean you can't work on the biotech side, of course. But that's just where I've seen most of them.
Okay. So both biomedical and biotech are almost similar only, sir. Is there any difference, sir?
Yeah, so the biotech companies, the biotech and the medical device, they're the same type of companies. They're just different words of the same. So, for instance, if you say medical device, you're pretty much narrowing it down to companies that make actual devices to be like implanted into people. But biotech could also be different things. Like biotech could also be like if they're working with genomes and they are changing genomes to fight maybe cancer or to fight HIV or things like that.
Mostly genetic.
Yeah, that's also considered biotech, but that's more like on the science side of manipulating genes. Medical device is more on the physical like construction of devices essentially, but they're both considered biotech.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. When you're applying to jobs, reach out to me again. Let me know, and I'll help you prepare for those interviews. Okay, so essentially, once you find a job and you have a recruiter that's going to call you, give me a call, and I'll be happy to help you get prepared for that as well. Okay. Now the critical part is developing your resume. So go to my YouTube video about my resume development, and I go over really. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I go over a lot of the details of what should be in there. So even though you don't have experience in those exact things, become familiar. Like start researching what those things are. Become familiar with it.
Because I'm a fresher, I don't know how to correct my resume. I will create my resume and send to you. If you have time, you will correct that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Feel free to do that, and then if you would like as well, my Patreon account, I'm going to be doing weekly live streams to help people with any questions. So if you want to join me on Patreon as well, feel free to. The link for that is in the bio on my Instagram.
Okay, sir. I will.
Okay. And
Okay.
any other questions?
No, sir. If I have any question, I will message you, sir.
Okay, perfect. All right then. I hope I was a help for you, and I wish you luck. And feel free to reach out to me for any further help. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps up the call for today. If anyone out there would like to be on a phone call like this, a career coaching call, or even a consulting call if you're a business owner, feel free to message me. Either leave a comment down below or direct message me on Instagram. Links to my social media are down below in the description. If you're interested in any of the equipment that I use to make these videos, links for those are also down in the description. Those are Amazon affiliate links. Anything you purchase from there, either those products or anything else through those links, does help out the channel. So I would appreciate if anyone does that. And then also I do have a Patreon account that I just made. I'm really excited for it. So this is going to be essentially live streaming weekly, where I can answer any questions that anyone has that are as part of Patreon. So if you want to get into the clinical research industry, just like today's call, you can join that, and I'll be happy to answer your questions weekly that are specific to you. If you are a business owner and you are looking to improve maybe the profits at your site, or you have questions on maybe how to find a good CRC or how to train your staff, etc., I can also answer questions like that through there. And that's only $5 a month, and I'll hold those weekly live Q&As to help you guys. Okay, and then again, these phone calls here that I do, of course, are free for you guys, and Patreon is really just a way for you guys to support the channel. So anyways, be sure to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell button so you're notified of my next videos, and see you guys next time.